Let me look at the camera. I see you guys. No. Okay. So today we're doing a special interview with my good friend James Parrish, because right, that's what you're going by. I'm not going to
I
call you.
am.
Okay.
We're both named James, but you're older than me, and I knew you since I was 5. So you got to take
I did.
the cooler name.
Yes.
And thanks for letting me use it this one interview.
You're welcome. Okay, so with James Parrish, he's coming out with a comic book. So a lot of you guys who follow me, you know I'm big into comics. I've done reviews, top fives, all that, and I've read a lot of comics, as you can probably see behind me. And I love comics, so I was really excited when my friend said, "I'm going to make a comic book." And it has been a few years, and he's finally putting out his Kickstarter at the end of this month. And we're going to get more into it, but I gotta say, I probably up there with James here in terms of I would be pretty harsh on it because I know him for so long. And guys, it's one of those comics where you open, you're like, shit, man, I wish I could make this. It's really good, and the art is awesome. I'm going to be showing some of it throughout this video, and you guys gotta check it out. But before we even get into it, let James kind of tell his story of who he is and everything, and then he's going to also pitch Detonator to you guys, and it's going to be really good.
Hey guys, name is James. I'm a comic writer and EMT based in Brooklyn, New York, and I've known your host since I was out of the womb. I met you when I was like 5 years old, and we've been comic nerds pretty much ever since. I mean, I probably learned how to read around that time, and I've I've definitely been picking comics up since then. And you know, uh, uh, James here, your host, actually made a comic back in the day, Sparks, and that helped spur me on to make my own. And I have the first one right here. It's called Detonator. And Detonator asked the question, what would you do to help a friend struggling with depression and PTSD? And our main character, Kaz, his answer, when all else fails, is to blow up his friend's house. Um, Kaz's best friend is a superhero that's struggling with depression, PTSD, that has isolated himself and withdrawn himself from the world and is sitting in his room all day. So, being very concerned, and at the end of his rope, Kaz says, if you're going to hide in your room, I'm going to blow it up and drag you out and make you confront your trauma. And finding out why he's doing something so insane and dealing with the consequences of his actions are would occur in my series Detonator.
And that's just like the first 7 pages, and then we get into the deeper plot, which is kind of dealing with that. And
Yeah,
it's extraordinary because I got to letter the first issue, and
thank
it
you.
was something special about reading the script. It's always great to read a script. I'm like, oh, this is good. But then when you see the art with the words, it's just something special. And every time I put up a page when I was done, I was like, I don't know if it's good enough, my lettering to showcase what the story is about, but I think the people who have read it now, they've said that
Oh
it's good,
yeah.
so I'm happy there. And then and then issue 2 and 3 are lettered by a professional letterist, right?
Yeah. Douglas De La Hose is his name, but I gotta say, man, I came to you to letter issue 2, and you were busy. That's the only reason you aren't on it. Your
Yeah.
lettering is up to snuff. I've done. I did that interview with my friend Dewey, and he's interviewed Greg Rucka and Bill Sienowicz and just so many comic heavy hitters. And I have no connection to this guy. And the first thing he says is, "Damn, the production is great. The art, the lettering."
Yeah.
So don't sell yourself short.
Oh no, I'm very glad I can be even a little part of this because as someone who loves comics, my main thing is if I'm going to be into comics, make my own or be a part of someone's, I want it to be good. And so far, I've read obviously the first 3 issues, and that's what's going to
Hmm.
be in this Kickstarter. And
Hmm.
so, reading them as you progress, that really the only negative, and you've seen other interviews, is that you get to issue 3 and you're like, okay, where's issue 4?
Cliffhanger, baby.
Yeah, you just leave us here. It's like so good. Issue 1, I think to me is the
Hmm.
issue that is a great hook, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. I don't even know what to really compare it to because I feel like when you compare it, you're kind of going, oh well, it's kind of like that. This thing,
Yeah.
kind of a unique beast in that it has the over the top action. but the themes of dealing with depression and trying to help people, you don't usually see it with this type of style, yet somehow it works. And so that's why
Thanks, man.
I'm so happy that this is coming out finally, because I've been telling him to release a Kickstarter forever. I already know it's going to be successful, but he
Yeah.
took his time. He's got 3 issues, so you're not leaving hanging after just issue 1, and it's definitely worth. I mean, it's 3 issues for $20, right?
Yep. Yeah. If
I,
you for the PDF, it's 15. For the physical copies, all 3 issues, which I got lined up here, we got issue 1, issue 2, a little shiny, and issue 3. Altogether they are $20,
that's
and it's
amazing.
65 pages.
And there's variants. So I know you
Oh
comic
yeah.
fans out there. Some of the names on here are pretty famous too. So
Yeah.
you want to look at this Kickstarter and be like, I know that guy. He did a Spider-Man cover.
Mhm.
So this is not a game. You're gonna have to order this because it's that good. But let's do a couple of questions, because I think people are watching. The people are obviously watching. Obviously, like comics or manga, whatever you like. I think this story would appeal to
Nerds.
anybody.
Just
Yeah,
kidding.
any nerd, or like the story is focused on PTSD. So even if you don't really like comics, you could probably everybody goes through depression, but some people deal with issues like what the character's going through of helping people, and then unfortunately having nightmares and struggling to even connect to other people because of what he's going through, and other people have it. And so I think that's what makes each character in this so different, especially my favorite character I'll get to later, being kind of a funny, supportive sister character. I love her. So we'll get to that later. Anyway, let's get to the questions, because I never actually asked you this, because I've listened to your pitches, I listened to your ideas, but what
Yeah.
is your favorite character to write in Detonator? Who is your favorite?
I gotta say, it's I'd say it's Kaz by a mile. He's each character that I have in the book, Kaz is the main character, but each character I have in the book scratches a bit of a different itch, and I'd say that Kaz is my favorite to write, followed by Matt. And Kaz, who's the man who blows up houses wearing a bomb costume. It's really fun to write him because he's just the voice in my head that he's just all impulse and all confidence and manic energy. So you know, where all of us in real life want to say things that are a little risky, or do things that are a little risky, Kaz will just do them. And he has a really fun energy, and you can take scenes in a lot of different directions with him. In one scene, he'll be asking if he can help his friend deal with his depression by trying to get him to meditate or go for a run. And then on the very next page, he will be putting on a costume to throw a grenade at his face when it doesn't work out. And it's pretty fun.
It's funny you say Kaz, because that character to me, when I first read your script, I didn't like him. But
Yeah.
I think that was on purpose, because he's that type of friend who means well, but
Hmm.
you just kind of want to punch him in his face, because he's trying too hard.
He doesn't respect boundaries initially,
Yeah,
and also another reason I love writing him is not I may have made him sound one dimensional, but him learning to respect people's boundaries, and him learning that what he's doing is unhealthy is really fun to explore, and leads to a much more well-rounded character. And
yeah,
I also like Matt because I work in emergency medicine, and some jobs we have are very stressful, and when you're interacting with the public in a medical crisis, and sometimes it wears on you, just like any job. I'm sure that everyone can relate to coming home after a stressful day of work and then having a fight with their spouse or their friend or just anyone, and feeling really really withdrawn. And Matt is Matt's someone who just usually personifies like weariness of just weariness of dealing with just everything pretty
yeah.
much. And I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah, no, and that's why right away I was Team Matt, because
Yeah.
you could feel for him, because everybody has been in that position where you're just tired of doing, I guess, the right thing, but is it really the right thing? Because why was he chosen to do what he has to do to save people? And it makes you ask questions of like this
Exactly.
superhero thing. It's almost a deconstruction, but not so bitter and not so
Definitely not.
dark.
I don't want to be cynical about this,
Yeah,
and also I think a lot of people can relate to Matt in that we all have a lot of problems, but we all don't know how to connect with people, or share those problems with people.
yeah,
Sometimes you can be afraid of being vulnerable. Sometimes you could be afraid of even just thinking about something that really upset you, and that's a lot of what Matt's struggling with in the series as a fallen superhero.
yeah. I definitely like both characters because they're so polar opposite.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna bring up a scene, but not too much spoiler. But I'll say the scene after. I want you to answer this. Is what
Sure.
was the hardest scene for you to write, and not too much spoilers, but you can add a little spoilers for it
Okay. The
in the
hardest
first three
scene.
issues, obviously.
Yeah.
Because
No,
if
I know. So the hardest scene was the final page of the final issue. No. But I would say the hardest scene for me to write. It was a scene I was really excited to write. Was the night terror scene in issue 3, I'd say, where oh, you kind of learn why Matt, who's a superhero, has withdrawn himself from the world. Or a lot of people who experience PTSD or extreme stress will sometimes have night terrors where they'll get up and walk around and interact with people, and they won't even be aware that they're doing it. They'll still be asleep, and and I I wanted to make the scene feel very sincere, and I wanted to respect people that are experiencing these issues. And it was also difficult for me. And ironically, I had the idea for this scene for a while, but before I wrote the script, I actually experienced a very similar issue where I had a stress induced night terror where I woke up on the other side of an Airbnb that I was staying at with a bunch of my closest friends. And I was being restrained by my friends because apparently I was attacking people in my sleep. So, writing something that close to home at the time was very tough. It's easy to talk about it with your best bro and a few years apart, though.
yeah, yeah. I also love that
So,
scene.
yeah, I'd say that was the hardest scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene, and I think people who can relate to it are going to, it might be a little hard to read it, especially even if it just happened or you feel like it could happen. I personally
Yeah.
loved it because I'm not going to spoil it, but what happens after is him starting to try to change, or not change, but try to find out why, get to the root of the problem. We get a little bit more history in the back. But anyway, I'm not going to
Hmm.
spoil any more. My favorite scene that I just want to point out, it's a small scene, is when, Detonator's doing all these horrible things, blowing up his house and being an
Hmm.
asshole. But when he overhears a conversation with Matt and another person and kind of starts realizing his own fuck ups or what he's doing wrong,
Yep.
it's that scene just hits me because it's almost like everybody goes through that where you're just kind of doing something wrong and you realize maybe I shouldn't have said it that way to that person. And it's
Oh,
such a
for
great
sure.
scene. You can relate, anybody who has friends or family that you've argued with, you can relate to the scene. And it's done so simple that it's not over the
Hmm.
top. He doesn't have a million bubbles in his head saying, oh, blah, blah. You just get it from that scene of his facial and how he's looked and how he feels. It's all in one page, right? It's just one page.
It's yeah,
Yeah,
it's one page.
and I love it. So obviously, James here, we like scenes that have that emotional weight. The
For
action
sure.
scenes are great. I don't want to undersell them,
Hmm.
but it's those scenes that hit that I remember the most, where I can go, "Yep, I've been there," and I think that's what makes those scenes so good.
Thanks, man.
No problem.
I know you've been there. I hope you haven't tried to bomb any of your friends during
No, I
this.
haven't bombed them.
I'm still alive, so probably not.
Yeah, you're still here. Okay, and so with that, it doesn't have to be. My next question isn't so much like just related to Detonator, but just top inspirations from. It could be manga, could be comics, could be movies, but just
Mhm,
top inspirations that kind of helped you towards wanting to write a comic, and then also this story and maybe future stories. But who really got you into it,
mhm.
in terms of doing something like this?
So I'll say for writing comics, um, one of my biggest motivators is Scott Snyder. Um, when I was first going to college, 18, 17 and 18 years old, I fell in love with his American Vampire comic,
That's
and
good.
super good. And at the time, he was doing a lot of interviews to promote that and his early DC Comics work on comic book resources. And a lot of his answers would give you he'd kind of pull back the curtain a little on his craft, and he'd explain how he would write a compelling villain, how he would set things up for an entire comic arc thematically, and he also talked about how he was living out of his car with his wife at the time, and didn't think he was going to make it, and didn't really have any connections, and all of those factors inspired me. As someone without connections, thankfully not living in a car, but as someone with no connections in the comic industry, and to have someone kind of spur newcomers on through his interviews, it gave me a lot of motivation. As for the craft, even though I feel like I write very differently from him, Rick Remender and his Deadly Class series and a bunch of his other works really influenced me in terms of their pacing, where every single issue of every Rick Remender comic, somehow, like, the final page will have the main character getting their head blown off, or finding out they have some sort of, like, they get sent to another dimension. I don't know. It's just, there's always an insanely gripping cliffhanger, and I've taken that into account. That and how his very first page, he'll just thrust you into the action most of the time.
Yeah.
And despite that, he's still able to um, tell a story through action, with minimal dialogue. But yeah, I took a lot from that, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean those are two. I think a little bit what Rick Remender too is he focuses a lot on depression, but also hope. And I think this story hits on similar themes. But yeah, I could definitely see the inspiration. I mean Scott Snyder, legendary at this
Yep.
point, and Rick Remender. Rick Remender's been in the game just as long. So yeah, these two
Hmm.
are definitely good
Yeah.
inspirations to have. Well, that's. I mean, if this is as good as those works, then obviously people need to pick it up. Obviously.
Yeah. I would say that if I could, if there are any writers I try to emulate, um, it would probably be writers like Jeff Lemire, who's my favorite comic writer of all time. Um, I'd say him, and on the other end of the spectrum, Daniel Warren, who's doing stuff like Extremity and the new Beta Ray Bill comic, where he's really good at telling at world building without exposition. He's really good at developing characters and telling stories through action. And then Jeff Lemire, whether he's telling a story that involves a deer boy, or people, or children in space with a robot mom, he will always make you cry. He's an
Yeah.
evil, sick man, and he will always make you cry. He always he can tell tender and human universal stories no matter the genre or setting. And I try to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean that definitely I could see. I mean Jeff Lemire, top dialogue writer of all time, probably definitely
Yeah.
very human characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see all those inspirations in this work. And then I wish I could ask Carlos his style of
Hmm.
the art because it is so different. It reminds me of some things a
Yeah.
little here like Goon, but it's so different. And obviously, as I'm making this video, I'm putting out images, and you can see it's so unique in that it's so over the top animated, but it's not like cartoony, if that makes sense. It's animated,
Yeah.
it's fun, but it also has this real feel to it. It doesn't feel like, like Power Rangers. And I love those comics, but it's just so different than pretty much anything I read out there.
Yeah.
Come on, Image, so another question I had is working with Carlos, who is the artist on this. You created this big world already 3 issues in. I've read this a little bit of script for the other stuff. And, it's such a huge world. It's such a unique world. And it's kind of almost a world that we live in, but a little bit worse, obviously. But you can definitely feel like you are part of it, especially after a pandemic. And
Dude,
so I know you wrote this before. There's people are going to be like, oh, you wrote it because of that. No,
they don't even know though that so the setting of Detonator takes place in a world that's been affected by a global pandemic and that's ravaged the world, and many people have died, and a very small portion of the survivors have returned with superpowers. And I started writing this in 2017, and I had to change it. I had to change it very recently. I have screenshots of the before and after, but the virus originates in China initially, but then
It's
COVID
true.
happened. So I decided to change the location to Canada because, no one really hates Canada. It's very pleasant for the most part.
Yeah, no, I read this all the way back then, or at least I had the parts of it. So when the pandemic happened, I'm like, oh, this might be an issue later.
Yep.
But no, so with this world, it's awesome. Now it's going to be 7 issues or 8.
7 issues.
Seven issues completed. I think that's a great number. I love stories that end. But even if you don't go to these characters, do you ever think maybe one day you'll return to this world or this universe you created here with different characters or the same characters?
Well, I gotta say, since I've been working on this for a while and I fleshed out the world, you don't really get to see a lot of it. It's isolated to one fictional island on the west coast of North America, and I would definitely, there's definitely stuff to explore. It's not mentioned in the comic, but obviously, like in literally every movie ever made, crazy stuff is happening in New York. In that the entire population disappeared instantaneously. I would definitely love to explore that, do a little mystery story. But I think that it would take a lot for me to come back to the world to write it again. And if I did, the first thing I would do is write I think a 1-issue or 2-issue epilogue, because the ending, without giving anything away, changed the status quo of a lot of characters. And while I'm content with where it ends, I'm a sucker for epilogues, and like every Robert Kirkman comic book ending, like will be decades later or go through decades, and I would love to do something like that with these characters.
That'd be also got a little return sneak peek.
And between you and the other people that have interviewed me, I have to do a solo series with your favorite character, Julia, Cass's sister. I just don't know what it would be because she's a normal person.
Well, I think the reason I like Julia real fast, the reason I mentioned that character earlier is because I think I relate to her most in terms of how she talks. Is she's just like, why are you being a dick? Why are you doing this? And it's things that I would say to my friend or my family member who's doing horrible things. It's like, you're doing it wrong. Like, stop. But at the same time, even if she's yelling at you, wanting to hit you, you can feel that she cares about you. And I think that's hard to get. Plus, she's funny as fuck. So any character that makes me laugh, I like a lot. But yeah, so before we get to the final question, or actually this leads into the final question, you're working on this. It's going to be 7 issues. The Kickstarter is coming up real soon. If everybody's watching this, it either is up live or coming in a few days. But the big thing is that you have the stretch goal that has the whole 7 issues, right?
So I actually, I realized that was a little ballsy and crazy for my first Kickstarter, and I I pushed the stretch goal. I reduced it to the stretch goals are as follows. We have starting off small with a detonator pin, then stickers and trading cards, and then if we reach the stretch goal, we can get to issue 4, and then finally our final stretch goal is issue 5. So I think I don't want to drive Carlos insane and try to have him pump out 4 issues in half a year.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think with that, it's cool that we have this idea where we can, if we do stretch goals, we have issue 4 and 5, which I think when you see the numbers, we can definitely hit that. But
mhm.
it's then after that, there's just 2 issues left. So
Yep,
we are about halfway through, right? Because he's already working on 4.
he's
So
working on 4 right now.
my final question is, now that once that's done and it's completed and you're done with your first final comic series,
Hmm.
what do you have next planned? Do you have, I know you don't want to spoil too much, but do you have something else that you're coming out with that you want to talk about?
Oh hell yeah! And I got to tell you, we're going into production in August. Um, and I'm working on Detonator, and I love it, and I'm gonna see it all the way through. It means a lot to me. But my brain is heavily occupied by this fantasy series I'm working on. It's called Prince Nobody, and instead of a epic fate of the world chosen one story, we follow a young man who is told and is treated like a prince who has a epic destiny like Harry Potter or Anakin Skywalker. And one thing that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way with these epic destiny stories, which I guess one thing that rubbed me the wrong way is that all these people rise to their destinies and grow up being mature, charismatic, and intelligent people. And I feel like if I was told by every single person I knew and people that are just meeting me to my closest family that I was special and that I was going to save the world, that I may grow up to be a bit entitled and lazy because if I'm destined to do something, why do I have to work for it? And Prince Nobody is the story of someone who is told all of these things and then finds out that he's destined for nothing and he loses all of the financial and social support that he was relying on. So you have this guy who is now an adult, desperately trying to make something of his life and live a meaningful, fulfilling life, uh, having wasted his earlier years.
Yeah.
And there are giant monsters and human trafficking and sword fights.
We got to
So,
add that in to keep you comic fan. No,
wait,
how
wait.
about now?
Perfect.
Good.
Yep.
I'm not gonna move.
Yep.
Okay.
The messed up Mike saga is over.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let's try one more time. So I got to see a few
Hmm.
pages of Prince Nobody. I think I'm one of the
Hmm.
only ones. And
Yeah.
I gotta tell you guys, the first page, I was like, oh fuck. This is like when I first read Attack on Titan. I was like, oh, this is gonna be
Hmm.
something. And then of course Attack on Titan sells a billion copies. So this reminds
Yep.
me a lot of this is for comic fans, but also I think manga fans. This is like the combination, the fusion of the two.
100%.
If you read
100%.
things like Vinland Saga, Attack on Titan,
Yep.
pretty
Yep.
much, I don't even know what else to say. It's kind of like I'm trying to think of comics that could be like, but that's what it reminds me
I
of.
would I would say I would say that my biggest inspirations for it are they come from a lot of different mediums where manga wise or Japanese animation wise, I'd say that Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke, huge influence, and I would meld that with PlayStation 4's God of War with the intense, intimate focus on just 2 characters throughout the entire story. You just don't peel away from them, and telling a more intimate story in an epic fantasy world. Combined with, I guess um, I'd say I combine it with Station 11, which is a really somber and melancholy post-apocalyptic novel that it's being turned into a TV series. You're all gonna like love it in 5 years. But my biggest comic influences would be series like Headlopper and Ultra Mega, in that it's a giant action-packed story where each issue has about 40 to 60 pages. One of my biggest complaints with the comic industry, obviously I love comics, but only getting 20 pages of content per month just leaves me so hungry for more.
Yeah.
And I wanted to leave readers a little more satisfied in between each issue.
And
So
it's
I'm
black and
taking
white,
like
right?
a manga approach.
It's gonna be black and white.
So it's going to be black and white, like manga, with minimal colors. Like there are going to be a few color pages each issue, unless when we launch our Indiegogo and Kickstarter, reach some stretch goals. Because the artist on it, Lam, I didn't even bring it up. She just keeps saying, I really want to color this. It looks so good. So
you can do two versions. You can do a color and a non. Some people want the original, some want that. You can always have that. That's a kind of unique thing.
I think I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
I will definitely do that.
So almost like it. So and similar to like those black and white and red, like for Carnage or Wolverine, like has just the some coloring in, or just you mean just a few pages like manga?
No, so like when you read a manga and the first few pages will be in color and then the rest is in black and white.
You're like, oh, they have blue hair. I didn't know that. That was blonde. Okay.
Yeah.
So well, that's awesome. Yeah, guys, I'm extremely excited for that, but I don't want to take too much away from Detonator because Detonator's right here. It's already have to, and I think that people are really going to enjoy this. So it goes live which day?
July 20th, this upcoming Tuesday. If you want to check it out even earlier, sign up for notifications on our Kickstarter. If not, we have a crap ton of good rewards when it comes out. You can get all 3 issues in PDF. You can get all 3 issues in print. They're right here. And we have 5 variant covers by people who have worked on The Last of Us 2, people who have done the background art on Rick and Morty. We got a poster artist he just did a variant cover for Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. Oh, no, actually, the new X-Men run by Dugan.
X-Men 1, the first issue.
Yeah, he did a variant cover for that, as well as movie posters. He does the art for Mandalorian on Disney Plus. We got a lot of cool stuff. You can get drawn into a future issue, and you can also get Carlos, the artist on Detonator, who's done all the sick art. I'm just going to show you the cover again because it's so good. Just his artwork is mind blowing, man. Just check that out. He'll draw any simple inked sketch for you that you want as an add-on. So we got tons of rewards, and I'd love to give them to you guys. So if any of that sounds good, July 20th.
July 20th, only a few days away, or if you're watching this a few days late, it's live now. I'm going to post the Kickstarter in the information box. I'm also going to put James's website, and then just check it out. And then once we hit those stretch goals, we're going to get more issues. And then, I'm very excited. Soon I'll know somebody in Marvel and DC. He'll tell me all the new stuff.
Hell yeah. I hope so, man.
I won't leave.
I want to write Batman.
Yeah, Batman or Captain America. His Captain America story. Oh, so good. Okay. Anyway. Thanks. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions for James, just post them below. I'll force him to go on YouTube. He's scared of it, but I'll make him. And,
I will brave YouTube for you.
And I hope you guys really do enjoy the comic once you back it. And if you do read it, leave comments in a few months saying how much you loved it. I loved it, so I'll leave my comment right there.
Thanks, guys, and thanks, James, for having me.
Of course, anytime. You guys go buy that shit. I'm not playing. Go buy it now. I'm just kidding. Enjoy the comic.